Well, hello all, and welcome to today's webinar, Caution, Disruption Ahead for the Construction Industry. My name is Jackie Thrasaboulos, and I'm Vice President of Marketing at B4 Consulting. Over the next 30 minutes, our panel will be discussing some of the top technology trends in the construction industry, such as high-def geolocation, next-gen 5D BIM, digital collaboration and mobility, the Internet of Things, and future-proof design and construction. But first, I'd like to introduce today's speakers. And first up is Jake Mackholtz, Vice President of Technology at Kiewit Corporation, headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska. Operating across North America, Mexico, and Australia, Kiewit is one of the largest and most respected organizations in construction, mining, and engineering. And as such, Jake and his team are pioneering technology innovations for construction companies both big and small. And Jake will be detailing some of those technologies for us today. Also with us is Dustin Anderson. And Dustin is the Global Director of the Engineering, Construction, and Operations practice at SAP. Now, while SAP is widely known for its enterprise business management solutions, SAP solutions are also running at more than 3,000 engineering and construction companies worldwide, with 60% of ENR's top global contractors running SAP. And also with us today is Philip Schell. Philip is Vice President of Industry Solutions at B4 Consulting. Now, B4 Consulting is recognized as the SAP go-to partner for engineering and construction. A full-service firm, we enable both on-premise and cloud solutions that help to streamline operations and improve productivity for the engineering, construction, real estate, professional services, field services, and equipment management industries. So I welcome today's speakers, and now I'll hand the session over to Philip. Philip?
Thank you, Jackie. This summer, the McKinsey & Company issued a very compelling challenge to the construction industry. How to deploy technology, not just to innovate, but to disrupt your industry, capture new market share, and create a different experience with your owners. Their premise is that the construction industry is ripe for disruption. In this day of advanced technology, cost and schedule overruns are still the norm in construction. Productivity is low and not improving, a trend of 40 years. The industry is...
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
The construction industry is among the least digitized in American industries, and this leaves the construction industry trapped in economic terms in a perfectly competitive state. That means firms provide nearly the identical services, they compete on price, and owners feel that they can freely substitute with other contractors. Next slide, Jackie. So what is disruption, and how is it different than innovation? Innovation and disruption are similar in that they both are makers and builders of things. Disruption, however, takes a left turn by literally uprooting and changing how we think, behave, do business, learn, and go about our day-to-day interactions with our customers. Harvard Business School professor and disruption guru Clayton Christensen says that a disruption displaces an existing market, industry, technology, and produces something new and more efficient, worthwhile. It's at once destructive and creative. Some of the best examples that I think we all have experienced in our day-to-day life are Airbnb, Uber, Kickstarter, and Aerial as big disruptors in their industries. These are the areas that are ripe for disruption. If your business processes and your technologies have the characteristics that you see displayed here on the screen, then you're at risk for a disruptive competitive force. Next slide, Jackie. What the authors of the McKinsey report are proposing are 5 significant technology trends which we're going to review. None of these 5 ideas are futuristic or even implausible. They're all grounded in innovations that have been taking place in the industry and are applicable to the construction sector. All are either being deployed or prototyped. But when all 5 of them are integrated together, they can become disruptive. Our point of view at B4 Consulting is that the construction industry needs to integrate their innovations to achieve this interoperability of their systems. And we believe that the best interoperability is called ab initio, which is Latin from the beginning. Today we're going to review these 5 trends and give you examples of how they're being used today out in the field and how the interoperability is even achieving ab initio interoperability. You're going to see how Kiewit is embracing these trends on SAP's platform to achieve their vision. So Jackie, let's go to the McKinsey first trend in the wheel. And this is how the industry is using new technologies to create as-is digital models. And this is the enabler to the ab initio interoperability. Laser scanning, LiDAR are being used to create models of rooms, dimensions, and features, landscape features, even underground features. This can make design models that build on top of these conditions even more accurate, preventing change orders, reducing the schedule overruns, and enabling off-site fabrication, which Dustin is going to show you in a few moments. These technologies have become very affordable, and they're rich with digitalized data that is useful downstream. This now digitally enables the next trend, which is design, and Jay Malcolz will describe how Kiewit is using this data to digitize the downstream processes. Jake?
All right, thanks, Philip. So like Philip said, my name is Jake Malcolz. I manage the technology group for Kiewit. I think Kiewit's a pretty interesting case study, especially as it compares to McKinsey. The first place that Kiewit really started embracing technology is the same spot that Philip left off there, which was our survey, our machine control, and this sort of thing. And really, where our story sort of picks up is on number 2. There is really working through the digital collaboration and mobility, and then ultimately working into what McKinsey describes as 5D. Why Kiewit's a little bit, it is interesting case study is we operate in North America, Australia, and over in Mexico, but probably bigger than anything is, the market diversity that we have. So, we're in the vertical building market, oil, gas, chemical. You can see in the water and wastewater facilities as well, and we do both self-performed contract work and general contracting. Next slide, please, Jackie. And when we really started looking at our digital transformation in 2011, one of the things we wanted to understand was why is engineering and construction so behind the rest of the different industries that are out there? And what we came to the conclusion was, and this is based on a study that was done by Stanford, is that really our industry has a hard time sharing information sort of in a real-time basis. And you can see that represented in this network diagram. Down on the lower right there, you can see the financial services area where information is shared readily. You can get to sort of anything you need at any time. And really largely the same way in the manufacturing, software, and media and entertainment. But if you look to the right of the slide there, what you see is really disconnects between procurement, construction, scheduling, estimating, our clients, and engineering. And an example of that is, if we go through and have a design change through engineering, how difficult it is to push down the construction over to our clients, up to procurement. And what that leads to is sort of versions of the truth in each one of those silos. And that was really the problem that we were facing in 2011 with our work as well. Maybe the next slide. So this is what we looked like in 2011. Our integrated solutions were largely our cell phones and emails. Out in the field, it was our radios, and then all of our processes were paper-based, whether it was our inspection forms, our time cards, our work plans, our drawings, and just really led to a lot of problems, challenges, and lots of manual steps in order to get done what we needed to get done in those days. Next slide, please. And so when we got going on our technology goals in 2011, and one of the things we focused on the most was we really needed a solution set that, you know, as we identify work to bid, and we go into the design and the estimate, it's a repeatable process. We've got standard account codes and standard designs that we use throughout that. That control budget, that information slides right down into control budget, over to project planning, and right on back up to identifying work to bid, you know, with a single version of the truth. And what we also looked at was really our staff efficiency over time had really started to decrease. And so one of the measures for our technology overhaul was, you know, we wanted to raise our revenue per man year for our salaried staff by 50%. We wanted to become a data-driven organization. A lot of our decisions had been made by, you know, really gut feel and this sort of thing, and we needed data to help drive our decisions. We talked about we wanted to be repeatable with our design and construction, not too dissimilar to the manufacturing industry, and also, you know, really standardize those business processes. You saw the different diversity of work that Kiewit does, and we wanted a standard way to do work sort of all the way through those different industries. Next slide. So one of the things, you know, one of the examples of how we digitized our processes, we looked at two of our core field processes. One, daily visual inspection, where we would do over 2 million annual inspections of equipment on a yearly basis. And, you know, really this process was a operator, before they got into a piece of equipment, would write down any issues or problems with that piece of equipment. The operator then would hand that off to the foreman. The foreman ultimately would get it over to the mechanics. The mechanics would probably not understand what was written on the paper, so they'd have to go back out and check the machine for whatever issues were described. And largely this would take us a week to 2 weeks to get a piece of equipment fixed up per the operator's instructions. And meanwhile, the operator continues to write down the same thing over time. Another good example is our time cards, where we would do over 1 million of them annually. You know, and we'd write down all the folks that were working on the operation, the hours that they had. The foreman would try and take a shot at, you know, multiplying, did we win or did we lose for the day, and then capture all the notes for what happened on the project, and just not a great way to really show what was going on a daily basis, so that, you know, we could really consume that information. So we really focused in on these two to start off our initial run. Next one, please. So a good example of this is, you know, our field data capture and mobility is, you know, really this play of the day process. And this is a process that we use to plan the day before, capture the time and the quantities out in the field, and then review the results the next day. And, you know, really just enhanced our overall capability to understand what was going on the next day. So, you know, as we plan this out, the foreman the next day has that information in front of them. What do they need to do in order to make money, cost versus budget that day? And on a daily basis, we get to review those results and see what adjustments that we need to make with a, you know, from one version of the truth, which is our budgets and what are the quantities that are being captured out in the field by the foreman. Maybe next slide. Another great example of this is really digitizing our workforce planning. You know, we had probably the most important thing we can do is get the right people to the right projects at the right time, and really get going in earnest with those right people. And so before, that was largely done very manually. We had to keep track of where our folks were, you know, what kind of talent sets did they have, what was their next spot in the rotation, and then what was the possible projects that we could win. Now we use a process where we have to do a forecast every month anyways on our people. Those dates are then integrated with our HCM system, or our human capital management system. And then our estimators are are really providing us with, hey, who are the people that it looks like we could win some of this work? So we're able to use some of our analytics, decide which projects we're going to potentially win, which ones we have the best chances of winning, and then start planning for our people where they might go. Once that work has been won, we really can go in and dive in and see who are the best people available based on rotations, based on skill sets that can apply to this work, and then ultimately assign them via HCM so that that process just starts over and over and over again. And again, one of these core processes that really digitizing helps provide us with the best people on the project at the right time. Next slide. So that gives you two examples of how we digitized our processes. We had many, many, many more. I wanted to give a couple examples and then really move into the next generation, which McKinsey describes. So we've digitized our processes. We've gotten good at our survey work and being able to capture that information out in the field. This is really what they described, McKinsey describes as 5D building information models. And this was certainly one of the heart of what we thought would really move the needle for Kiewit. But the big challenge we had, although we had digitized our processes, we really needed to integrate that design into those processes. And, because we're in such a diverse marketplace, we really use all of the major authoring platforms in order to design our work with. And if we were to try and make integrations to all those different locations, you can see you really have a sort of a technology nightmare. So we worked together with our partners over at N8, and they created a product called Infinity that is commercially available. And what it does is it takes the CAD authoring solutions and then integrates it tightly with all of our processes downstream. So we can tie together the design, and it could be from multiple designers based on multiple platforms, and then tie it to some of our digital processes. So quantities, procurement, schedule, project cost. And so, we don't have to, you can do that information, or you can capture that information in your typical process, bring it all together, and I'll show you what that looks like now. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So the 5 use cases that we've laid out here, and there's many, many more. Infinity really represents the infinite dimensions that you can sort of look at on a project. But the first one we've shown here is our model versioning control. Critical ingredient. We talked about earlier how that pass from engineering over to construction largely had wound up with some islands of information. So now on a real-time basis, as there's a new design kicked out, we can really manage that design, take it to the next step, which is taking off those quantities, and then help the designers manage to the most efficient design possible. From there, from that information, we can go straight to procurement, buy the goods and parts and pieces that we need for the project. We digitize that procurement piece, and then this ties right on top of that. And then the next step there is then you get the visual progress side of the house. And so now we're integrating into schedule, so we can see, are the parts and pieces ordered, what got accomplished out in the field, and start making adjustments based on that real-time information of how the project's being constructed. And then the last, finally, because our foremen have a time card out in the field, we also provided them with the model, which is attached to the document control, so that they've got an opportunity to, in context of what part and piece they're working on, they can pull up the drawings if they want to. They can make field edits if they need to, create an RFI, and also they can see their visual progress and cost versus budget performance. So really that is the key elements. Again, there's many other ways where we're using Infinity to really help make our projects more efficient and more transparent to our clients, but we thought we'd share those couple of use cases. Maybe next slide. And now I'll turn it over to Dustin to describe how we're how we're moving into the next sections of the McKinsey report.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jake. It's great to hear background on what you're doing at Kiewit. Very encouraging to see technology driving a difference in your firm. So we're going to talk about the fourth and fifth points from McKinsey's study here. And the first one is the Internet of Things. One of the common threads between what Philip shared and what Jake shared is the massive amount of data that is available and being collected. The Internet of Things simply magnifies that point. So what is the Internet of Things? It's often referred to as an acronym IoT, but simply defined, it's sensors on things that connect to a network and share information. So it could be on a piece of equipment sharing temperature or vibration, etc. And according to Gartner, by 2020, over 21 billion IoT devices will be in use worldwide, and that's up from about 5 billion this year. So sensors and Internet of Things are increasingly used in manufacturing and areas such as logistics. You know, even farming has gone digital with sensors driving fertilization and yield optimization. And we really think it's unlocking exciting new possibility. It's not necessarily new technology, but its acceptance as a tool to radically change the industry is very real. In fact, SAP has committed $2.2 billion by 2020 towards research and development related to IoT. We really believe this is a game changer. A couple of construction-specific examples. We have a customer in the Middle East, and they were facing weak demand and really faced with a decision. They either needed to get more efficient or go out of business. So leveraging sensors and the Internet of Things, they put sensors on over 16,000 assets to monitor and improve utilization of these pieces of equipment. Using predictive analytics, they're saving about $15 million a year in reduced downtime, reduced fuel costs, and reduced maintenance expenses. And this is also while providing a safer environment for the construction team. In a very low margin business, this is real money towards the bottom line. And you know, for a second example, I'm actually going to turn back to Jake. Jake, I know you've had an experience with sensors very successfully with equipment. You've also dabbled with it with sensors in concrete to help understand when to pull forms. But maybe you could share a few of your thoughts on sensors and the Internet of Things.
Sure. Thanks, Dustin. You know, one good example that we have, we've got obviously a large, diverse equipment fleet, and you know, we've got John Deere equipment, we've got Hitachi equipment, obviously we have Caterpillar equipment, and so we've got a really mixed fleet of equipment. And so what we wanted to know about our equipment is sort of the same information for every single piece, and the sensors for every one of these, the telematics for every one of these pieces of equipment was slightly different. And so we had to bring all that information together so that, you know, we knew where all the pieces of equipment that we own were at, what the fuel levels were, what the hour meter was, and sort of what the utilization of those pieces were. Pulled all that information together. The simple use case was just simply, hey, let's know where that stuff's at so we can get it fueled and we can know our utilization. Ultimately, what that turned into is adding a little bit more data from external source, you know, the auction houses that are out there, and we can see, okay, hey, where is the locations and the time to sell that piece of equipment versus when do we want to go get it fixed up. It really helped on our utilization, raised us up about 15%, and makes our equipment just that much more efficient, which is huge to our business. So I'd submit that as a pretty nice example or use case for Internet of Things.
Yeah, thank you, Jake. I can't imagine what a 15% increased utilization on an equipment fleet of your size must mean to your organization. That's great. From an SAP perspective, we don't provide the sensors. We actually just work with the data provided from these sensors. So we work with companies like Caterpillar and Siemens and the equipment manufacturers to help our customers understand how to better leverage and use this information. Next slide, Jackie. So designing with materials and methods of the future, perhaps the biggest disruptor of these topics is the evolution in the industry of both materials and delivery methods. Obviously, there are new materials such as self-healing concrete, aerogels, nanomaterials They're constantly altering how we deliver projects and how they're constructed and designed. However, I'm going to focus a couple minutes on the innovative approaches to delivery, such as 3D printing, prefabrication, project manufacturing, etc. We see these methods can lower costs, speed up construction, and also provide improved quality and safety. And what you're seeing on the screen here is an example from one of our customers. This is an example of 3D printing with our customer in Amsterdam, Heijmans. And they actually recently printed a 3D bridge, metal bridge, across the canal in Amsterdam. Now, it wasn't, again, without challenges, and as they're figuring out this process, they ultimately ended up printing it in a warehouse due to pedestrian traffic concerns. But ultimately, they believe this is going to lead to a 25% reduction in material costs and a 50% reduction in labor costs. Next slide, Jackie. The other piece of a delivery method is portable and modular buildings is continuing to gain momentum, utilizing prefabrication, off-site manufacturing with on-site assembly, and really this could be as big a disruptor as any in our industry. Next slide. Many of you have probably heard this story. A Chinese company built a 57-story building in 19 days. It's just amazing. But even more amazing is they exceeded most of today's building standards and eliminated 15,000 truckloads of material waste. Next slide. Now, in complete disclosure, the assembly process took 19 days. There was off-site manufacturing that took lead time and preparation. And you can see from these pictures the manufacturing and warehouse facilities that were required for this project. The top left is a great depiction of that, and you can see what's taking place inside. But the bottom line is quality was impeccable, and the whole project was incredibly labor efficient. Go ahead and move to the next slide, Jackie. So I have this quote up for a couple of reasons, and I'm going to go ahead and read it. It's from Ray Kurzweil, who's a futurist and a Google executive. But the problem is a lot of people, when they think about the future, they think about it linearly. They think they're going to continue to address problems using today's tools at today's pace of progress. And, you know, I think that we're at a tipping point within construction and an opportunity to really disrupt this industry. And a great example of that, I mentioned that this is beneficial for a couple of reasons, but Google being in the Silicon Valley, we've had a chance to work with exciting new startups in the industry, and most don't think of the construction industry as a place for startups. But there's a firm in Northern California that's recently been formed by a bunch of high-tech executives that come from the Silicon Valley. And after observing the industry from the outside, they really believe that there was yet another way to construct. So they're tying design, supply chain, manufacturing, and construction together with technology to deliver construction projects in a different and more effective and efficient manner. So they're leveraging some of their best practices from manufacturing and supply chain and high tech, coupled with experts from construction. And what we really see is that they believe they can build buildings 50% faster at 50% of the cost, and ultimately having an asset that is 50% more effective from an operational standpoint. So these new delivery methods are really going to disrupt our industry, and there will be outside players and your current competitors that embrace these that are really going to have a chance to make a difference. So that kind of concludes my piece of this. I'm going to turn it back over to Philip for conclusions, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Dustin. Hopefully you've seen that these real-life examples of technology that are in place today are certainly meeting the challenge that the McKinsey report laid out. And also, hopefully you'll see that these ideas are plausible. These are things that are being done by companies like Kiewit out in the industry today. They're all grounded in innovations that are very applicable to the construction sector, and they have been deployed or prototyped in some places around the industry. But it's when they are all five integrated together, they become disruptive. And one of the characteristics of disruption is the changing of the experience that the owner has with the firm that has crossed over to this disruptive methodology. So I'd like Jake just to make a quick comment in closing. What has been the impact of the relationship with the owner? We see the impact out in the field with some of your activities, but how is your technology starting to shape your relationship with your owners, Jake?
Good question, Philip. The way I describe that is technology is now becoming an expectation for our owners, that we have good practices, procedures, documented processes, and that we share data with them more and more and more, right? So that they have the same access to the same data that we have, and they can see where there's holdups on the project, and we can all work together in a more collaborative fashion. And so, as we see, contract models adjust and change from just rip and read hard bid to, now maybe we've got the whole entire project from financing all the way to operate and maintain to somewhere in the middle with CM at risk, that communication is so important, and everybody has to stay in the loop because all the parties are so critically important. So I'd say that's probably, closing that gap on communication that we showed earlier is an expectation of our clients, and the more that we can do of that, sort of the better off we'll be as an industry.
Thanks, Jake. Jackie, I think we are concluding here and ready to perhaps take some questions that any of the attendees might have.
Thank you, Philip, and thank you, Jake and Dustin. So open up the session to any questions anyone has. You can send them in through the question or chat box. Just give it a couple minutes. Okay, there's a question. Jake, can you describe how behaviors in the field changed with a daily knowledge of how productive the crews were?
Sure. I think a couple of things have changed for us. Number one, we feel like we have better plans that we're pushing over to the foreman on a daily basis, but probably more important is that feedback that we get back from the field. So number one, if a foreman doesn't make their production necessarily for the day, a lot of times now we're getting good feedback as to what happened, right? So if we've got a chronic problem, we can get it fixed much more quickly. So not only do they have a goal or a target to shoot for, probably more importantly is there's issues that come up on a daily basis, and if they're consistent issues, we can get in front of those in a real-time basis and try and help fix those up. So it's not just the competition for the foreman, but it's also that opportunity that we have to fix chronic problems before they manifest themselves on a monthly basis as a huge cost overrun or a large schedule problem. I'd say that's probably the best way I can describe one of the things that one of the major benefits that we see out in the field there with our foreman.
Okay, we have another question too. You mentioned predictive analytics on equipment assets was made. Could you please elaborate on this, and how is this done? What tools were used?
Sure. I mean, really, it's simply pulling in the telematics information into a portal, along with our utilization of the equipment. So this is all the data. What's the life that we expect from the different repair parts that are, or the different parts that are out there on the equipment, and then balancing that out for when do we sell the piece of equipment, or do we sell the piece of equipment? What's the right place to go sell that piece? Really just pulling all that data together. So I think it's a good example of using, Internet of Things, both sensors on the equipment and also data external through, just websites that you can get for the different price points for equipment being sold.
Good. And we do have one more question for Jake. What has been the impact of your project's budgeting and forecasting processes? Explain before and after.
Sure. From a budgeting standpoint, I think one of the key ingredients from this is, our estimates get converted into project plans or project budgets, without a ton of manipulation. It just, it seamlessly flows across because we've got a standard process that we use there. On the forecasting side, I mean, we close the books on a weekly basis, monthly basis, in 2 or 3 days, which is much, much quicker than we used to do in the past. So our guys have the opportunity in a very short time frame to provide a forecast that, then we can spend our time going and working on our problems that we've recognized during that forecasting period. So it's just much improved, and the duration that we get to those forecasts is just much, much quicker. Plus, we're able to forecast and focus in on previous performance, so we can compare like items and very quickly see if we have an opportunity to really make an improvement, or if it's something that, maybe we've got just an estimate that's a little bit too fast, or an opportunity to look at the past costs and say, hey, we can be doing better. So from a forecasting standpoint, probably the process is much faster, but the data is so much better to actually make decisions with. I think that's probably the most important part of this digital transformation.
Terrific, thanks. There are a couple more questions that have come in, but with consideration to time, I think that we'll address those offline. I want to thank Jake and Dustin and Philip for today's session, and remind everyone that a recording of the session will be made available to all registrants. And they also got a question on the McKinsey report, and I will send a link out to access that report as well. So thank you all very much for joining us today. And again, if you have any questions on these technologies, please give us a shout. Thank you so much.